Morning and welcome to the Titusville City Council meeting of August 14th, 2018 at 6:30. I'll call this meeting to order. We have a quorum. Is there any member of the clergy that would like to do an invocation? Not seeing any, please join me in a moment of silence. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First order of business is approval of minutes.
Yes, sir. Mayor, if I could, before we get into the meeting, I'd like to make some recommendations for agenda changes.
Okay.
Water Resources Department would like to add a presentation under item 5, presentations.
Okay.
We'd like to table item 8A to the 25 September meeting, which is your last meeting in September. And we'd like to move old business item 11A to after boards and commissions prior to the petitions and requests. 11A will go to right after boards and commissions prior to petitions and requests.
Okay, do you need a motion on that?
Yes, sir.
Did I hear a motion on that?
So moved. How about that?
What he said.
Yeah, what?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign, passes unanimously. Okay, first is approval of the minutes.
We move to approve the minutes of the regular city council meeting on July 10th and July 24th, 2018.
I have a second. Second. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion, corrections? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign, passes unanimously. Special recognitions and presentations.
Yes, sir. We have Mr. Sean Stauffer, our Water Resources Director, and he's got a quick presentation for council.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening, sir.
Just wanted to take a few minutes here and talk a little bit about what happened July 30th. I'm sure as everyone's aware, we did have a wastewater spill here in the city. And just want to start off by saying, we work very hard in the department to protect the lagoon. We have many projects. And so when things like this happen, it's extremely disappointing. And so we just want to take some time and talk about what happened and be here to answer any questions. Okay?
Okay.
All right. That didn't take too long. Okay, so here we have a map, and just to help everyone kind of orient where the South Street lift station is, just by its name, it is at the terminus of South Street, right along the lagoon. And so we'll go into what happened. If you hadn't heard, on Monday, July 30th, around 6:30 a.m., we got a call to our emergency line of water leaking into the lagoon from behind the lift station. We had crews respond, and they found that we were having a sewage leak, and immediately dispatched the field crews, and we got things under control in about 3 hours from being notified. So what happened? Here you have a picture of the pipe. You can see the area that is circled. That is a lateral split down the pipe, and it almost appears if that's a seam, but there is not a seam in this pipe. That is where it broke, and so you can see it's actually quite large and that kind of lends to the amount of sewage that was discharged at this break. And this is actually, that's the underside of the pipe where we have the picture. So the next question is, well, why did this happen? And so here we have just a basic drawing, and you can see to the right of the picture, there is a white line, and we have that titled Abandoned in 1979. This is one of the, back in the 50s, a lift station was built here. This was one of the first lift stations in the city. It was also the largest back in the 1950s, and still remains today one of the largest lift stations. When it was originally built, the force main, and that's the pipe that from the lift station, the pumps move the sewage towards the treatment plant. The line originally was placed in the lagoon. And this, today I think we would probably question the thoughtfulness of putting a pipeline there. But that was the choice that was made in the 50s. In 1979, that pipeline split, and the city went through actually an emergency replacement of that pipeline. So approximately 40 years ago, the city installed another force main that then ran west along South Street and then north up Indian River Avenue. And so that's where it is currently today. And so that was, took a couple weeks. It was quite a large spill that occurred back in the 70s, and it was a very big deal back then for the city. And so the question is, what happened here this time? So what we found is when we got the spill under control and did some excavation in the area, we found that when we upgraded the South Street lift station, and that's when we replaced the 1950s lift station, and when about 20 years ago we redid the station to what it currently looks like today, there was a portion of the main that was replaced back in '79 that was left active, and we have that denoted there in red. And you can see at the red star there is a valve there, and that's where it's closed, where it would go into the old station. But that section of pipe was left active, but it doesn't go anywhere. And so really it was unnecessary to leave it in that condition. And so when we talked about in our statement about improperly abandoned, that means that that small section of pipe that doesn't provide any service or have any utility still had pressurized sewage in it. And so what we think happened was that probably due to Hurricane Irma, there was the bedding or the land underneath the pipe there out towards the river, some of that got washed away and created additional stress on the pipe. And so we believe that's what ultimately led to the failure of this pipe. But for the past 40 years, that small section, while it shouldn't have been in service, but had no issues whatsoever with it. So what was our response to this? Once we found out about it, we had crews out there immediately, and like I said, that we had things shut down and under control in about 3 hours. We went through, we've cleaned and disinfected the area around, and then we also reported this discharge to the state of Florida. One of the other responses that we did is we put together a news release because we wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of what was going on. And we had that sent out to all the news media, posted on the websites by the evening of the 30th. One of the other steps that we took is in the affected area, we put together some flyers and went door to door notifying all the residents that were in the affected area because we wanted to make sure that they were aware of what happened, even if they didn't see it through typical media outlets. We wanted to be doubly sure that they were aware of what was going on, as well as to let them know not to come in contact with the water until further notice. Another step to the response was we set up some water quality monitoring sites, and so we did 5 different locations along the lagoon. We have a map here, so we had 1 to the north, 1 directly at the lift station, and 3 to the south. And these were selected, we selected the areas, but it was guidance of DEP that gave us kind of the area and the general distance and kind of where to place them. The general consensus is that while the river doesn't flow like a typical river, but there is a general flow from north to south. And so that's why we had one on the north, which we would consider our background, and then, of course, one at the site, and then 3 to the south so that we could see the extent of the effect of the wastewater. And so with that, we did 3 days of testing. By the third day, all effects from the spill were no longer present in the water. And so what we tested for was bacteria. And by the third day, levels were either absent, there was no bacteria found, or they were extremely low. So the next question is, well, what are we going to do to keep this from happening again? Because, of course, nobody wants this to happen again. What we did is we've gone through and we've looked at all of our records that we have for all sewage utilities along the lagoon. And particularly, we looked at areas of pipes that had been abandoned, ideas that were similar to this. And so we found about a half dozen cases where we can't tell for sure exactly what occurred. It talks about things are abandoned. It talks about the way they've been secured. But to be absolutely certain, we're going to dig up and expose each one of those to confirm that it is the way that it's supposed to be and that the way that it's abandoned is up to current standards. So we want to be very sure that we don't have anything like this again. Let's see, so there we talked about that. One of the other things that we have, we understand that the assets along the lagoon must be in top operating shape, and we did suffer some damage during Hurricane Irma. And in the budget workshop tomorrow, we'll talk about some of the plans that we have. Currently, there's approximately $1.5 million in our budget to do upgrades, improvements, and repairs to 5 of the 9 lift stations that are close to the lagoon. And that represents about 20% of our capital budget is going towards efforts along the lagoon for sewer. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Council, any questions?
Can I?
Go ahead.
Oh, didn't push my button.
I'm sorry. Go.
Are we likely to see any fines from DEP?
The last time that we had a major spill to the lagoon was about 10 years ago. It was about half the size of the spill that we had 2 weeks ago. In that scenario, we did get a consent order from DEP, but the fine was $1,000, and then they let us do a pollution prevention project.
Okay,
Okay, for part of the fine.
so we may end up with a fine this time, potentially.
Potentially, yes. We have a meeting on Friday with DEP.
Okay.
Now, I'm going to comment that the first time something like this happens, they'll take a look at it and look for negligence and all kinds of things, as I understand the system, the process. The problem would really come on the second time. Then they're not apt to be as
Forgiving?
forgiving. That's a good word for it.
Yeah.
Who else is up? Member Diesel.
First of all, I know that I was one who called, just one, I'm sure there's more, who called for some sort of a report here. I know that I received a lot of phone calls on this issue. A lot of it just had to do with what happened, and I think you did a very good job of explaining what happened and what we're doing different. The one thing you did say to me that, or you did say that caught my attention was perhaps Hurricane Irma and perhaps some support, some dirt or whatever was washed away. Do we have a process by which we go and check such things after a hurricane? And if we didn't, I'm sure we do now.
Yes, we do, and that's what we use to build one of our CIP requests that we'll talk about tomorrow. And the $1 million that we have for 3 of the lift stations along the lagoon, that's based off of a structural engineer's review of the lift stations themselves.
Okay. And I just kind of want to take it out of your report because I know you've kind of stated all these things, but these are some of the main questions. We have an idea of the age of all the pipes up and down our sewage line and the ones that are the older ones that we're watching?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chairman?
Thank you.
Vice Mayor, I'm sorry.
No,
I got
thank you,
the
sir.
cards there.
I appreciate that.
Got to change cards here.
That's thank you, sir. And I welcome any insight that you can give to me. So, water's complicated, is the one thing that I've learned. Anytime you talk about moving water, that is just complicated. For my scope, my personal scope and understanding is that there was a discharge of about 1 million into the Indian River Lagoon. But for understanding, I think during Irma, Melbourne and our folks down south had about a 20 million gallon discharge, somewhere about.
Brevard County had approximately 20 million.
Yeah, so that's a lot, but just for perspective, that helps me. My biggest, I think I have 3 concerns. My biggest concern is, can my daughter go swimming? And is she in danger of getting sick from a discharge like that? My family wants to go swimming in the lagoon, or a tourist wants to come over and they want to go swimming somewhere in the area. Are they in any danger?
No, they are not, and that's why we did the bacteria testing.
Okay.
And that would be the concern with human contact or fish or boating and recreation in that area, and that's why what we monitored for was bacteria. And by the 3rd day, the levels were extremely low or absent.
And then for the small islands that are in the middle of the river, is there any impact? As an example, whatever discharge is in there, would it possibly settle up on the sand and then all of a sudden that's contaminated sand, or that would be also clean and that might be, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, we were actually, and when I talk about no bacteria was found, that was on the 3rd day at the lift station. So right there,
Okay.
it had already either diluted out or was no longer active bacteria site.
Okay. All right, those are my 2 biggest ones. I think it's evident that moving forward, there's additional work to make a prevention like that. But of all the things and pressures that are being put on enhancing and protecting the lagoon, I feel 1,000,000% confident that this isn't just something bad happen and we'll deal with it. It's much larger in scope, and I feel very confident that the city of Titusville is engaging a comprehensive plan that deals with infrastructure as well as other things to deal with not only this, but other things that might affect the lagoon. So thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Member Stokel?
Yep. First off, thank you for the presentation, and I want to commend you guys on, as soon as this happened, I felt you guys really were, at that point, very proactive on trying to inform the community and getting everything cleaned up. You all helped me out a lot with the questions I had that citizens were coming to me, so I appreciate that. Also appreciate the strategy here. This is actually some of the questions I was going to ask for you. Moving forward, I just want to clarify a couple things. How many lift stations do we have in Titusville?
We have just over 100 lift stations.
Okay, and then of those, you said roughly 6 are a little uncertain as to what the condition is on their piping?
No, we're certain about the condition of the piping. We have, there are 9 that are close to the lagoon or either on the lagoon.
Okay.
And there are 5 that we currently have capital improvement, either projects or requests for improvements.
Okay. So when you said, though, when you were mentioning earlier about a half a dozen, was that in reference to unsure of if they were capped correctly or at what point?
Oh, and
That's kind of what I was
that's where we
referencing to.
have abandonments that where it says that it's completed correctly,
Okay.
But you can't always trust what's written on a piece of paper that's 30 years old. And so if there's any of them that we can't readily see or we haven't seen in the past 10 years, 15 years, the current staff that I have, we want to visually check them in the field to be sure.
Okay, and then that leads into my last question that Member Diesel kind of touched on, monitoring after hurricanes. Is there any process currently in effect, or can there be, as far as annual monitoring, just to check and make sure that, like you said, that the documents are correct and to kind of be ahead of the situation, and as we try to budget for them, to make sure that we do have the proper infrastructure there?
Well, it's our expectation that here shortly, within hopefully the next month, we'll be able to check all the locations and be
Okay.
certain that there aren't any of these legacy issues out there. And then as far as any new ones being created, just make sure that we inspect the work that's occurring and making sure that our inspectors are there and visually doing what is expected and what's directed by the city.
So there are somewhat annual inspections of the lift stations currently?
Oh, actually, we visit every single one of our lift stations weekly
Okay,
as a preventative maintenance check, as well as we have a computerized monitoring system where we look at a number of different operating factors in the lift station 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
okay, and then last question, what about sewer, storm drains? Are any of that included in inspecting?
Sewer storm drains?
Yeah, any of those?
Well, in our world, we would consider those two different things.
Okay.
A storm drain only carries rainwater and runoff, and a sewer, in our world, we would call that for sewage.
Okay,
So, and there are, in some cases, particularly like in the city of Atlanta, they have what's a combined sewer, and that's where wastewater and stormwater combine together. And that creates serious issues, but we don't have anything like that in the city.
okay, perfect.
Okay?
Thank you.
Any other questions here? Have any of you come, have any of you come to talk on this matter or would like to talk? I don't see any hands. We'll just go on to the next thing. Sorry, lost my phone. Boards and commissions.
Yes, sir. Accept the Board of Adjustment and Appeals semi-annual report as written.
Thank you. Okay,
Motion to accept the Adjustment and Appeals Semi-Annual Report as written, sir.
can I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Member Stokel.
You're getting fast.
This is a little game they play up here. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign, passes unanimously. Next item, sir.
Board of Adjustment and Appeals, currently there's one vacancy for an alternate member with an unexpired term to expire on July 31st, 2020. There's currently one applicant on file for consideration. Mr. Felix Ortiz has expressed his willingness and desire to serve on this board. His application is part of your file, and staff recommends you appoint one alternate member to the Board of Adjustments and Appeals.
What's your pleasure?
I'd move to appoint Mr. Ortiz to the board as an alternate.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign, passes unanimously.
Planning and Zoning Commission resignation. Regular member, Dr. George Faison, has submitted his resignation effective July 25th, 2018. His term was scheduled to be expired on January 31st, 2019. Alternate member Suzanne Noel Copeland advised that due to her work schedule, she did not wish to be considered as a regular member, but will continue to serve as an alternate on this board, with her term expiring on January 31st, 2019. Staff recommends that you accept regular member Dr. George Faison's resignation from the Planning and Zoning Commissions with regrets.
Have a motion to accept
Move to accept
with
the,
regrets.
with the regrets, the resignation of Dr. Faison. He's been here, he has done wonders, and I think we all appreciate his service.
Absolutely. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have, pick one. I have a motion and a second, and I certainly concur. Dr. Faison has been working on various boards for 50 years now, and he's always done an excellent job, and I'm going to regret not seeing him here at City Hall. I would also like to send a special letter to him recognizing his service. So if you don't mind including that as part of the...
I would include that as part of the motion. God knows he deserves it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. All right, I have a motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign, passes unanimously.
Titusville Environmental Commission appointment. Currently, there is one vacancy for a regular member with a term scheduled to expire on November 30th, 2018, and one vacancy for an alternate member with a term scheduled to expire on November 30th, 2020. Ms. Jennifer Cotton currently serves as an alternate member with a term to expire on November 30th, 2018, and has expressed her desire to be a regular member of this board with a term scheduled to expire on November 30th, 2018. There are currently two other applications on file for your consideration. Ms. Tammy Nelson and Ms. Laura Lee Thompson have both expressed their willingness to serve on this commission. Ms. Laura Lee Thompson is not a resident of Titusville. To the extent the City Council is unable to appoint members to meet qualifications of being registered voters and a resident for 1 year, City Council may appoint up to 3 non-residents of the city who reside within the boundaries of the North Brevard District 1 who are registered voters and whose application demonstrates an educational background or professional experience in environmental sustainability issues. Staff recommends that you appoint 1 regular member with an unexpired term to expire on November 30th, 2018, and 1 alternate member with an unexpired term scheduled to expire on November 30th, 2020.
I see your light on, Member Nelson.
I took some time this weekend to really consider what my desire would be. I did speak to Ms. Thompson, and she understands that she would not be in all likelihood appointed tonight, and I think she has enough on her plate that she's not really worried about that. But between Jennifer and Tammy Nelson, I don't know Jennifer. I do know Tammy. She was a relative at one point 20 years ago. She does have a very serious environmental engineering background. She's been working at it for the last 20 years. So my preference would be to appoint her to the board and continue Jennifer Cotton as an alternate. However, I believe there is also an opening in September, and perhaps at that point make her a regular member. I think Tammy has the experience and the drive to really go with the board and really provide some work for us and some really good ideas. So that's my thought.
I have another light on it, so we'll see what's Vice Mayor.
Yeah, and so I can speak to Ms. Cotton. I've worked with her in the past, and she is an environmental sciences teacher who does additional research. She does oceanic research, a lot of shark tagging of all things. Like that's. She currently is a teacher and has been. She's just a wealth of knowledge from science. I would just share with you, she is both a passion and an extensive background in environmental issues. So, and then she served on that board for a while as well. So, for Laura Lee Thompson, God knows if you talk about the environment, she's got everything covered. But I think to be fair, we have some residents who have applied and
No question.
Yeah,
It's
so
our ordinance.
yeah, so that would be one. I would recommend Ms. Cotton to take the seat, and I know she would be very excited to do so. But I think we're fortunate enough to have 2 very probably good candidates, and so I would defer to you, Member Nelson. But just to her credibility, she's really good.
I'm
Were
sorry.
you putting it on?
I
taking the last one
obviously I'm
off, but
having some
Go ahead.
buzzer problems. I agree with Vice Mayor. I think Ms. Cotton would be an excellent person on there because I would love to see that board really reach out to the schools and to the kids and help them understand what we're doing and what they can do to help our environment. So I'm really hoping that both of them will end up there.
Member Diesel.
Again, I'm not really familiar with either one of them personally, but looking at the applications, we really need both of these people on the board as soon as possible. Member Nelson here, our not member Nelson, this Nelson. 20 years of environmental safety and health field, worked with the Air Force, Army, as well as NASA. And then you've got another one who teaches environmental science every day. You know, I'm good however y'all want to go, but we need both those on as soon as we can. Awesome applicants. And I should say, we've sometimes struggled with awesome applicants. These are two awesome applicants.
Struggle getting awesome applicants. Yes. I got it. Member Stokel, you're next.
Okay, I'm kind of with Member Diesel. I'm not too familiar with either of them, but looking at their background, both of them are great. I would say I'm probably leaning more towards Ms. Cotton just because she has served as an alternate, letting her become an official member and then putting Ms. Nelson on as the alternate, and then hopeful in September that we can get her on as a regular member is where I'm leaning toward. So.
Vice Mayor?
I would be comfortable with that suggestion if there's no objections from Member Nelson, but I'm open to discussion.
One of the reasons that I suggested putting Ms. Nelson on first is because she has a very strong personality, and I think she could lead that council, that commission.
You want to reverse it?
Yes.
We can reverse it. I'd
like
fine
to
with that.
reverse it.
Okay. So I would then make a motion to appoint Ms. Nelson as the regular member of the Environmental Commission with Ms. Cotton being the alternate member.
A motion, do I have a second? Second. Discussion. Normally, I would say go with the person who's been there the longest. In this case, it's such a short time for the transition, I don't see a big difference either way. So with that, any other discussion from anybody? All those in favor say yes. Yes. Opposed, like sign, passes unanimously.
We're jumping to item 11A now, which is advisability for Martin Luther King Honorary Street renaming. On July 24, 2018, City Council approved advisability to honorarily rename a portion of South Street at the request of the South Street Target Area residents in conjunction with the Neighborhood Revitalization Strategy Area Plan. The approval was the segment from South Street from Palm Avenue, located at the courthouse, to east to the city's water tower to the west. On August 6, 2018, Neighborhood Services Director received a written request from Lynn Golden, who's the president of the Concerned Citizens Group, requesting that the city consider group's request to change the segment designation of South Street to include from Cheney Highway, State Route 50, to South Washington, US 1, from the previous request from the NRSA Community Group. Should council authorize this new advisability to designate the honorary name to extend from Cheney Highway to South Washington US 1, staff will begin the process to work with FDOT to seek support for Florida legislative bill. Because next year's legislation session doesn't begin until March 2019, it will not be possible to get this through the approval process within staff's preferred time frame of the January 2019 for in conjunction with the Martin Luther King Jr. Parade. So staff's recommending that you approve advisability to reconsider extending the honorary street designation from South Street to US 1.
I see no lights up, but what's your pleasure?
We have some cards as well, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. The cards on this subject?
We have one card. It's Lynn Golden.
Would you like to come up, please?
Good evening, Counselor.
Good evening.
When we were up here to the meeting, I think there was a miscommunication. We started off with the water tower, the courthouse, and then when we formed our meeting here through the Concerned Citizen, and that's a group that has been established since 1992. And so it was kind of dominant. So instead of getting more groups involved, we decided to just go in and vote on new members. And when we got into the meeting, it was discussed that what the council actually said that they will be willing to do. Then it was like, okay, was it 50? And I think that was my last question when I got up out of order and then came back up. And was it 50 to US 1, or are they just going to give us to the tower, to the courthouse? And that's where the revisal was coming in. So that's why I'm here tonight, because when I go back to my meeting, I don't want to take the wrong information to the members anymore.
It's 50 to US 1. It's on the agenda.
52 US 1?
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, that's
was
all I
easy.
needed to know. Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
Oh, wait, ma'am. You have a question here?
Oh, go ahead.
And so that is the understanding, and I see the joy.
Yes.
Which is nice.
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
And I'm putting a caveat to that,
Mm-hmm.
where I think some of the concern was, although I'm at the end state, I'm grateful for it from going from 50 to US 1.
Right.
But I think that there were 2 points. One was from water tower to here.
Right.
That was something that the city would be able to do, I think, with not a lot of concern that there would be impediment to that. That was my takeaway from it. In absence of us being able to, and that would be in time for the Martin Luther King Day parade, so on and so on, but it's much shorter. The next step, going that full distance, and staff, please feel free to clean me up.
Yes, sir, that's
Thank
not
you.
correct.
Okay, please
we-
help me out on that.
Yeah,
Thank
we still need to have approved by the Florida State Legislature.
No matter what?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then never mind.
Okay.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you.
Never mind.
Never mind, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. We need to vote, any other discussion on that from council? We need a vote on that? Accept the vote?
Yes, sir.
Let's make a motion.
Move to approve advisability to reconsider extending the honorary street designation of South Street from State Road 405 to State Road 50 to US 1.
Second.
Yeah.
I
Thank
have a
you.
motion, I have a
Second.
second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say yes. Yes. Any opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. We are back, and I believe we're on petitions and requests at this point. Are there any petitions and requests from the public? Would anybody like to speak on any subject? Yes, but I think that's, well, either one of you, who wants to go first? You're closer, come on up.
Good evening.
Good evening. You can move up if you'd like, ma'am.
My name is Robin Taylor. I reside at 4997 River Edge Drive. What I'm bringing before you, Mr. Mayor, you're familiar with, or Vice Mayor, I mentioned to you, it's been quite a while, but I've been going through some personal issues myself, so I've had delay. But this all started back in 2013. I won't go into the extensive history because we'll be here all night, but Mr. Mayor, you're familiar with it. What happened, the city allowed our development, Hidden Cove Townhomes, to enclose our second and third floor balconies. We do overlook the Indian River. And with the history, we were built in 1983. We have the current code allows for a 20-foot lot width for a total of 2,000 square foot total lot size. When we were built, we had a 16-foot lot width with a 1,300 square foot lot size. So we are non-conforming to the current code. So with that said, we had balconies that we enclosed, so we wanted to extend our balconies. So what happened, the city allowed us to add on a screened-in porch addition on the patio which allowed a 10-foot setback. The balconies for the second and third floor required a 25-foot setback. So our confusion was where we had the patio, which is a lot more intrusive than a balcony is. So we have our patios. Now we have a 2-foot balcony, and I can give you, for clarification purposes, I will give you these printouts.
Just hand them to me, ma'am. I'll pass them out. Ma'am, I'll take them and pass them out. You can go back.
There's 32
Fix 'em
units.
early.
I have 7 people represented from our community here tonight. We were expecting a bit more. A couple have actually had to leave because of the time that it's extended. But if you look at, we have a conformity issue in our development where some people have added on top balconies, second floor balconies, patios. And we are now currently having an issue where some of the units do not have balconies at all. Our kitchens are all on the second floor at the base of the stairs going to the third floor. So you got an extreme safety issue where if we don't have our third floor balconies, then there's no egress in case of a fire, anything like that. Am I out of time?
Yes, can you do it quickly? Because we really can't make a decision on this tonight. It has to go to staff and they have to look at it.
Well, we are asking, the council did make a decision to reduce the setback for accessory structures to 10 foot in June of 2014. And there is a letter by Ms. Busaka that states that the balcony issue was the reduced accessory structure rear setback adopted by the council in June of 2014 does not address the addition of balconies into the existing primary structure rear setback. We are really, I mean, if you can see how this has come out, we are out of total conformity in our development. We are already out with our porches, 8 foot. All we want to do is add a balcony over top of that. They said that we can't consider that second floor a balcony. It's the roof of the patio, even though they allowed us to put in sliding glass doors to go out on that balcony. They wouldn't let us put railings up unless we enclose the bottom with screen, which one has nothing to do with the other. So we're asking council to allow us to put these balconies on so we can have the egress. We just need that third floor balcony because we already have the second floor balcony, even though they want to call it a roof. So we are going out onto that balcony. We have sliding glass doors, so we do have that situation.
Okay. I understand, ma'am, but this is petitions and requests. You've made your petition and request. We will turn it over to staff to look at it. We can't analyze it tonight. There's all kinds of papers you have there and so forth. I think I was back on city council at that time, but most of these members have not been, and it would be unfair to try and make a judgment without having to discuss with staff what the situation is. So if you'd like to pass those over to Ms. Busaka over there, and if you will give her a call, or she'll call you to go over this, and then it will come up at a later meeting.
Okay, that's.
You've waited how many years now?
Okay, I do. Can I make one more point?
You may.
Are you familiar with Gene Bowles?
No.
Gene Bowles teaches the Floridian planning officials. He teaches all over the state of Florida. I talked to him quite extensively about this. And last year at our meeting, on the Planning and Zoning Commission, we went to his class. After the class, he came to my house and spent an hour and a half of his own time. And he said there's no reason that this should not happen, that the city should be working with us to make this happen. And, he's got a very good reputation. I've taken 2 classes with him here with the city, so.
Thank you, ma'am.
I think that's an important factor, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you going to give that to Ms. Busaka or some of that information?
Sure.
And you contact her, please. Thank you. Next item is consent agenda.
You're still on petition, sir?
Oh, I'm sorry. There is one more.
Actually, I apologize for my misstep earlier.
That's all right. No
Sorry about
problem.
that. I'm not a politician, I'm a business owner, so sorry about that. Anyway, my
No
name is
problem,
Leslie
ma'am.
Lapone. Pardon?
No problem.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Leslie Lapone. I own Lapone Enterprise. It's the golf cart dealership, 503 Cheney Highway, corner of 50 and Sisson. I actually have a request. I need some help. It's a code enforcement issue. My competitor filed a complaint against me. It had to do with containers and a fence. For some reason, I don't know, nobody's listening. They're not listening to me. I've spent upwards of $15,000 trying to resolve these issues. I have engineering fees, I have plan review fees, I have staff fees, I took a fence down, I tried to do things properly. Had a golf cart stolen, $5 grand, gone. And I'm a little bit confused because I was reminded tonight that one of the issues has been removed, the fence. The other issue was the containers, and I thought that we talked with planning on that. And planning was a lot of my problem trying to get this resolved. Things like we would submit a plan, they demand 17 trees be planted. I don't know if you know where my property is, but 17 trees be planted on my property. It's a little bit difficult to do. Basically, planning wants me to return the property back to the condition of when the RV shop was there. I don't understand that, but that's what they're trying to do. Basically, what I'm asking for, here's my request. I'm asking for discretion. I'm trying to make this work. I'm trying to correct the issues, and I'm asking for discretion. I have a wholesale business I need to find a home for, and we're looking at, I'm creating jobs. I've got 20 jobs on the line, and I'm trying to get this done. I would love to do it in the city of Titusville, and I would really like some help to get that done. So basically, I'm just asking for some discretion and some breathing room, because my business is my livelihood. So I'm just asking for help.
Understand, ma'am. You have to understand you're already in code enforcement.
I understand.
You've been cited. We cannot, by ordinance, do anything.
I understand that. I'm just asking for some help and some guidance.
I'll guide you to Ms. Busaka,
Okay.
no, I'm sorry, to the city attorney. It's already in code enforcement. We can't handle it. Is that correct?
Correct. This board, council cannot intervene to a code enforcement case. If she's unhappy with her requirements as the codes are written, council could ask staff to look at those codes and see if the codes, if you want to address the codes. That's something setting policy council can do, but you would not intervene in her code case and advise staff to do something different in her code enforcement or her site. But you could certainly look at the codes if she's unhappy with the way they're written and decide whether you're happy with the codes.
Okay. You will have to go through code enforcement. I think that's what you're asking us to do. I think everybody up here would be willing to look at the code, but you will have to stand by whatever code enforcement says. So I'm not sure what that's going to do for you.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm not asking you to change what code has done. It is what it is, and I know that's what it is. What I'm asking for is give me a little bit of guidance and help me with some of these departments, because they're absolutely ridiculous to deal with.
Ma'am, I'm familiar with your problem. It's been going on for some time, and it seems like you haven't made any movement to do anything about it. That's why it got to code enforcement.
Oh.
I think you have compartments over there. What do they call them? The truck things over there. How many of those do you have on your property?
I have 3.
Well, did you have?
No, I'm sorry, tab 4.
Do you have a permit for those?
I do not, and that is what we were. What I was trying to address. Here's what I think the issue is. The issue is this: after spending all this, the engineer I worked with is actually here. I've got $6,000 into him, and every time I went back to planning, it was always a new set of requirements. Always a new set of requirements. This is falling on deaf ears, I can tell.
No, ma'am, it's just there's nothing I can do.
Okay, that's...
This council cannot do anything except review the code. If we see any problem with the code, not for you, but for everyone, we'll take some action on it. In the meantime, you are already cited, you are already in code enforcement. We cannot change that. We cannot, if we wanted to, we cannot.
I understand that.
Okay.
I understand that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Great. Thank you.
Right. Right, Mayor. I also want to point out if citizens are unhappy with staff, your city manager runs the operations of the city, and he would be the one who would handle his, if you have complaints with the staff, certainly you can take that to the city manager.
You can talk to the city manager about any problems with staff. And the vice mayor has a question for you.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe a question you can help me out just on understanding and two different portions. So one is that the specific code and process and so on and so on, and the mayor, thank you for the clarity on that, because there's some things that we can't be involved in, that is for sure. And by definite, and staff is given direction through policy in order, and they are applying direction that was given. I think as a council member, the one, and I'm somewhat familiar with this, the background, but not tremendously. But I am familiar with the property. I am familiar with what I hear is as a somewhat smaller business, but still has 20 jobs coming to Titusville, enhancing a property that was bad for a long time. There's an investment into it. There's more jobs to our community, and it's not going smoothly. And possibly as a business owner, there may just be some steps along the way. But also as a city, are there things that we can help in the experience as a small business person going into an older property that we can smooth that out as a process? And I would be interested in just looking at from kind of A to Z, where do we start, where are we at, just as a process review. Not specific to what are we going to fix right now for you, but just how are we doing on somebody who's invested into a property from an economic development standpoint, because it's kind of a big deal. If we have a case study when somebody's coming to us saying, I'm investing money, I'm doing this, what lines of communication or what steps or actions led us to here to where I think everybody wants it to happen. It's just a matter of how we're going to get there. And if there are things along the way that we can do to change, that would be great to know. But if there are things that are working in place, that would be good to know. So when I hear you say breathing room, I don't know how much breathing room we can do, but I would love to see kind of the steps along the way with the city that have been taken, what's being asked of you to do, and just look and see if what's being asked to do is really reflective of where we're at from a policy standpoint. Because if we're going to drive someone, as an example, I like Publix. Publix has a great tree line in front of it, so on and so on. And if I'm Publix, I probably have money for that. If I'm a smaller business, I probably don't have money for that. And so as an example, if some of those things we're asking for are just cost prohibitive, I want to know that as a policy, because if trees are making it not okay for a business to open, then I'd like to take a look at it. So
Individually, each one of us has the right to look at it.
Sure.
And I've already said to the lady that I thought we all would probably look at it.
Okay.
So, but it's the same thing I said to her, I'm going to say to you, we can't change it and without changing the ordinance, and that's another whole process. That's not what she's looking for tonight. She's looking to stop the process somehow, and we can't do that, or change the process in time for her not to be dealt with under code enforcement. We can't do that. It's already in code enforcement. It's like somebody has something written, a subpoena or something, we can't change it. Okay.
Can I leave you just with one thought on that? If y'all are going to look at this, there was a statement that was made. It was past chair of code enforcement, or code board, was Mike Cunningham. And it was, I think it was more a comment, him as a developer, and he said, these older properties, I'm going to paraphrase it, but the older properties, they will never come into compliance. It's an impossibility. So, and I've been trying to get that point across, but nobody's listening to me in planning.
I'm
so
listening,
it's an issue.
but you're not
It's
listening
difficult.
to me.
I am listening to you. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Member Stokel?
Yeah, I just had a question, just to clarify. If you could, you mentioned briefly on there that you would attempt to come into compliance and then the code would change or something, you'd get a new set of requests that aren't being met. I would be interested in seeing that because that is something as council we could potentially look into when we are looking at the code and we are looking at ordinances, because we really do try to make it very friendly for you guys to be successful, and we want the business, we want the jobs here, and we simply don't know if you guys aren't telling us that. So I know for me personally, I would be very interested in seeing that. If you could kind of moving forward, as we kind of already touched on, it's going to code enforcement, so our hands are tied to some extent in that regard.
I understand.
But moving forward, if there's things that you're seeing on your end that would be helpful or more beneficial in the future, I would be very interested in seeing that and maybe getting in touch with you more. So,
I
very
would
good.
suggest, ma'am, that you, unless, well, I'm going to say, I would suggest that you go to the city manager so that he can get all the information disseminated to all of us.
Oh, I absolutely will.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, anybody else here to speak on the petitions and requests? I see movement. Are you coming up, ma'am, to speak? I don't think so. Ma'am, I think you're next. I think she's leaving.
I'll try to make this really fast. Of course, I don't move real fast.
You have 3 minutes, ma'am.
Do my best.
You have 3 minutes, so go ahead.
Yeah. Let's see. I had some papers here I wanted to share with you. Okay. And what this is about, what I'd like to ask you about, and wonder about the code as well, because you say nothing can be done by you unless it's a code change. I live on Indian Oaks. That's this page. Do I have enough? I don't have enough, do I? Do I have enough? Good, good. Okay. I live on Indian Oaks, and it's lot number 7 there. There's the thing. And if you turn the page, the next page, you will see that PUNDE.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, but your name for the record, please.
Oh, I'm sorry, Diane
My
Law.
fault.
That's all right. That's all right. Okay, anyway, the city has a pipe that runs down the lot line. And that pipe takes all the water from this community here and dumps it in my backyard. And it says, and they do have an easement for that. But the problem is, I'm disabled, and have to pay a lot of money to keep that maintained. And then they turn around and they charge me, like everyone else, this money for stormwater. But yet I'm the one that's paid for the stormwater. All my neighbors are paying you. I don't get any money to clean up this stormwater every year. But yet I hired someone this last year to come in with a backhoe to make it deeper, because people with the hurricane around that area had a water problem. Well, all that water goes into this ditch here, and it's just not big enough to hold all of it. So that's why I brought someone in to dig it out. But it's supposed to be a public utility easement. It seems to me the public utility, since it's their pipe and all the lots behind me are all dumping this water, that I get some help from the public utility. And then I don't know why I'm being charged for stormwater when I'm the one that's paying for the okay for stormwater in my neighborhood. So that's my issue. Is there anything you can do about it?
I can ask the city manager, is there somebody here who can?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
We have a
Member of staff. who is
Public Works Director
familiar.
as well as Stormwater.
Right. I got a letter from Sandra Reeler. And,
That's her out there.
oh. Is this gentleman with the
That's her
public?
boss.
Oh, good. Thank you.
The circumstance that's designed when the subdivision was built is very similar to a lot of the new subdivisions. The pipes are ours, but they outfall to privately maintained retention facilities that are deeded over, or I mean, they're restricted in their covenants, they're restricted on their plats to be maintained by the property owners. It's common occurrence, even our most recent subdivisions that way, Ben Oak, Meadow Ridge, a lot of the newer ones, the ponds are the subdivision responsibility. If there are no HOAs, they're the property owners. We take care of the pipe system, and that we keep the pipes clean, we keep the roads clear. As far as the application of the fees, we fee all properties in the city that are developed, because that fee doesn't go to individual properties, they go to the whole. So that's for the maintenance of every pipe in the city, every improvement the city makes. So every property, the credits go to maintain ponds. But beyond that, there are no exemptions to the stormwater system, including the city. The city pays its own fees.
So what you're saying, and clarify for me, is you pay for the pipes and clearing the pipes, but where that water goes, you're not responsible for.
Not when the restrictions to your deed state that you must maintain that area. It doesn't state that it was dedicated for the city to maintain, it was restricted in your deeds.
There was something, this declaration of restrictions was signed by somebody else. It wasn't signed by me.
But it carries with the property.
Well, it's supposed to be, it says, go to this committee. There is no committee. There's no committee. There's no HOA. There's nothing. Now, in the newer communities, yeah, maybe there's HOAs and they take care of those ditches because everybody pays into the HOA to take care of the runoff. But I don't have an HOA. So all that water from all my neighbors, God love them, dumps into my yard. It's their fault, but you know. And so I don't understand if I can't get some help.
The problem we have is that when it's restricted to not be our maintenance, then we would be applying public funds to provide maintenance for an area we don't maintain. And this is a circumstance that happens all over the city. If you recall, that very similarly in La Cita, we have an area that we've talked about previously, that they have special conditions on their properties that they maintain a ditch where all of our water travels through it. We have obligations to keep that clear in the event of its flooding, but we don't have an obligation to go cut the grass. So it's not an uncommon occurrence to have properties that are responsible for water entering from purposely developed property. You know, it's not that they didn't develop them, they applied drainage easements, they dump them to these areas on purpose. But the maintenance to it was assigned to the property, not to the city's infrastructure. So that's we do maintain a number of ponds in the city, but they are purpose-built, publicly maintained ponds.
The people who did the subdivision wanted it that way, and they put it in that way?
Well, that's the way they did the restrictions on it. So yeah, it would have been there, you know, it could have been at the time, the coding required it, you know.
Is there any recourse? I'm going to ask the city attorney, or maybe explain the restrictions of what that.
Well, typically when they develop a subdivision, they decide when they create subdivision where the stormwater will go. They set up the HOA who's responsible for maintaining that common area for the stormwater. She's right, some of these HOAs become defunct. They dissolve and they're no longer maintaining that. If the city is obligated, because it becomes a nuisance to go maintain that, then we can look at the benefit provided to that community and assess all of those property owners. But it's the obligation of those property owners benefiting from that stormwater pond that are responsible for maintaining that pond, not the city. Because it was created for their benefit and it was developed that way for that subdivision.
The original group in there wanted it that way. I'm trying to figure out if there is a recourse and.
Yeah, I don't want my neighbors to be
they
overtaxed, but I would like mine to be eliminated because.
Well, that sounds fair, just you.
Yeah, the stormwater, I'm paying for stormwater and yet I'm still paying more to maintain and take care of.
Ma'am, I understand your perspective, but it's not quite as easy as that. I do have somebody that wants to speak, Member Diesel.
Was this like that when you moved in there? Was this situation as it is now when you moved in?
Yes, the property has gone from person to person, and it was quit deeded to me. So it wasn't as if we signed and I saw all these contracts and stuff. It was just, I paid off someone's loan and they gave me the property.
Okay, I haven't seen this property, and I'm trying to get a visual here. How much water are you talking about?
Oh, gee.
I mean,
that's why I gave you this.
I've got that, but that's not telling me how much water you got.
Well, this is, 200 feet long and 25 feet wide.
You said you had to get a backhoe in there? You paid somebody to backhoe it?
Yes, I brought a backhoe in because people that were on the other side said that they had gotten water that overflowed. And since all the water is supposed to be here, I took it upon myself to have someone come in with a backhoe and make that deeper and better for everybody.
And was there, and maybe staff can answer this, and maybe you don't know, was there an HOA or is there an HOA that had something to do with this at some point?
When they first, there was a declaration of restrictions. It starts out, know all man of these presents. Well, I'm not a man, so. it doesn't
Ma'am,
apply to me.
please, let's stick to what's at hand.
I'm kidding. So anyway, but yes, there was something in here.
Okay, that's fine. I guess where I'm coming from is that if it's an HOA, I get that. They've agreed to do this and they do it that way. I can tell you that I moved into a house that I grew up in and there was no HOA. There's never been an HOA. And I sometimes, when I listen to people out there, I think, how would I like that? Well, I wouldn't like that at my house. And I'm not sure that it's fair if it's at my house when I had nothing to do with it and I don't have an HOA to deal with. So I'm not real sure I like this situation. This isn't exactly, maybe it's not a planning and zoning kind of thing. So it's one of those things where I would say that I'd like to see us look into this and see, if she's got to bring in a backhoe to make this work. It seems to me she's got quite a situation there. That's me.
Yes, thank you. I would appreciate someone coming out.
City Attorney?
But as Mr. Cook pointed out, that's private property, and we're restricted on using public funds and public resources to go onto private property for a private benefit that's only benefiting those property owners. That is a private stormwater pond for that community.
And I understand that, I do, but if you're to dump city water, storm water, or whatever on my private property, I'm speaking how I would feel about it. I would like to think that the city's going to be at least understanding enough that maybe we've got the cards that say we don't have to do anything, but the right thing to do is to take a look at it and say, wow, you got a lot of water coming here. Maybe we can do something else. I just don't want that water flowing onto my property, even though on private property, it's city water, is it not?
No.
Correct.
It's the community, it was developed as a community, and it's stormwater from that community that was developed that way, and that's where the stormwater was created to flow.
It's going on their property.
Okay. I'm getting it. I'm just saying there's nobody sitting here now that would like that flowing on their property.
Sure, I'd be glad to look at it with Kevin.
About 6 years ago when I first moved in, the city did come out and lay sod on that property, on my property. So they did take a step for it. The problem is over the years, all the dirt and stuff coming off the road fills up that ditch. And I have to constantly, every so often, clear it out so that sod isn't there anymore. That's been long gone, but they did try. Someone tried.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Member Diesel, I appreciate the compassion. I'm really not, and my heart goes to you, but I really am not. I don't believe it's the right direction for the relief or potential relief, and here's why. I believe as a gist, and you go to the 70s or whatnot, some of our developments from our 70s, right? So our developments from our 70s, quite a few had HOAs in that development portion of the city. As an example, my house was built in the 70s. Our HOA has expired. It's been 30 years. I live in an older house.
Correct.
And there are portions that come along with that house, and the transfer of rights from developer to HOA, from HOA to homeowner, that's a pattern, I think, in Florida that's fairly consistent under Florida law. And because of that, here's where I see this playing out at the end state, where I believe that the ongoing maintenance is ungodly beneficial to the city. Make no mistake about that. I think that we get a great service from the private residents who are making these improvements to compensate for storage of water, potential water, but that was a portion of the development many moons ago, but you kind of left holding the bag with it.
Right.
Here's the problem, I think, as a city. If at some point we decide that we are going to take on all outfalls and all stormwater storage, that is inclusive of day one of housing to now, that's currently private property, our infrastructure and also additional funds required for maintenance of that property I don't possibly see how we can do it as a city. And
Well, how about this suggestion, may I?
Sure.
Those people that property is there, can some kind of clause be put in that they don't have to pay for stormwater? It's $85 for me, you know? But, and other people that are doing all the work for that stormwater, could that be a consideration? And make that a proposal?
I hear you, I chomp on it. I'm not really in favor of that, although I understand, and it's very reasonable. I just wouldn't be in favor of it. But thank you.
I don't think you'd lose that much money, but okay. I thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else, sir? Sir, you have to come up.
My name is Charles Hibbs. I'm a member of the city. There's a stormwater credit policy. I can't understand exactly what that's for. It talks about being able to give back 30% of the stormwater fees that we pay to maintain. It sounds like what the lady was just talking about, is that not true, or is that something, it's in the code?
To be eligible for a credit in the stormwater system, you have to have a St. John's approved pond permitted to standard. So having a pond on the property predating the St. John's permitting doesn't give you the credits. Having an undeveloped pond, it's just an outfall of open land, doesn't give you the credit. It has to be a pond. The goal was we credit those that have stormwater facilities that hold current capacity standards, hold water quality standards, and will likely not have to be improved in the future. So you get a credit on that as a reduction for those residents that are served by those ponds. And those are reviewed on a regular basis. If you're not getting the credit, let our staff know. We take a look at it, see what's there, commercial properties and residentials, and see if they have the ability to get these credits.
Okay, we have a similar problem in our subdivision right now too. That's what I was wondering, how this is supposed to apply, because it doesn't, I don't see about St. John's, but that's not what it looks
Mr.
like.
Cook, can you get with this gentleman and
Yeah,
take a look at what he
Sandy
has?
can get his information.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Ma'am?
My name is Peggy Ricardo. I have a bad throat, so I can't talk louder. My question is about this stormwater fee that's been imposed. I live in an area, I'm actually behind the Highlands in Sun Valley, but I'm the very first house. And originally, they said there was a creek that ran behind the property and no one could build there. Well, the city ultimately came along and piped it and ran it into that stream that runs along Worth Avenue. Well, when it rains or anything, there's a huge amount of water that fills up that lot. There's like 3 ponds, or 4 even, that build to the point where you look like you could go in them swimming or something. I mean, they're pretty good sized ponds. Now, when that water dissipates, it probably drifts my way somewhat. And I got this huge stormwater bill. How come I got it and my neighbors didn't?
That I can't answer you. Mr. Cook, you have...
It's $90 a month, 89 and change.
Did your neighbors tell you they didn't get a stormwater bill?
They didn't get one like that.
Yeah, all developed properties in the city get a stormwater bill. So all the residentials are going to get the same bill. They've all been given now 2 notices of what their billing rate will be per home. They are sent to the owners because they're on back tax-based, non-ad valorem assessments, so they go to the ownership. If they're renters, they won't see that. But they all have been distributed. We take the database from the property appraiser is what's used to establish everything from ownership to addressing. So that database is provided with our information and shipped out. So yeah, everyone's getting a stormwater fee.
They got one,
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
but
ma'am.
they didn't get one like I did.
They should be the same. If we can certainly review specifics of that, but the residentials will be the same rate, and the ones that get the credits will be slightly less. But the variables happen in the commercial facilities, not in the residential. So we can, Ms. Reller's in the back there. If you give her your information, we'll verify that the billing is correct for your property.
And then they're going up 3%.
2.5%, yes, ma'am. 2.5%.
That's going to be so out of control, just for taking away stormwater.
Yeah.
Well,
Doesn't make
can I
sense.
add to this a little bit?
Yes, go ahead.
Part of the reason that we collect stormwater is really to protect the lagoon and protect our environment. The baffle boxes that we put in along the riverfront are extremely expensive.
Oh, sure.
And, replacing some of the pipes to make sure that, we don't have leaks, putting in stormwater ponds so that our water isn't discharged into the lagoon and there's a way to filter it. That gets very expensive. I pay that stormwater bill too, so I know.
But the Highlands, which is an older development, theirs are lower than Sun Valley.
I'm sorry.
How can that be across the street from each other?
Everybody should get a stormwater bill.
Yeah, but proportionally.
She's saying hers is larger than ours.
I'm not sure why yours is larger, because it's supposed to be a specific rate for a residence and then a specific rate for a business. There's a lady behind you that...
Ma'am, right back there, there's a lady against the wall. She will take your name and she can go over the numbers with you at a later time. Not this evening, but you can get together with her and she'll have all this. She'll have all the properties there and you can take a look at them and show her where you are and so forth. Okay?
All right, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else wish to speak under petitions and requests? I see no one else moving forward. We'll go to the consent agenda.
Yes, sir. And council, we have no cards, and items A through O, if any council member would like to pull any of the consent agenda items before I read them for the record.
Anybody would like to pull anything? I see no one saying anything.
Okay, sir, for the record, and we have tabled item 8A to the meeting on September 25th, 2018. Consent agenda item 8B, approve the award of a contract with the initial term of 1 year and 4 option years, 1-year renewals to JP Automotive Incorporated, Amico Transmission Florida of Titusville, Florida, in the amount not to exceed $172,070 per independent repair shop works for cars, light and medium duty trucks. Additionally, award Paradise Ford of Cocoa, Florida, in the amount not to exceed $127,117 per year for Ford franchise dealer repairs, shop work for cars, light and medium truck, and additionally award to Ron Norris Ford of Titusville, Florida, in the amount not to exceed $103,844 for Ford franchise dealer repair shop work for cars, light and medium trucks. Additionally, award to Ron Norris Buick GMC of Titusville in the amount not to exceed $242,800 for GM franchise dealer repair work for cars, light, medium trucks, and authorize the mayor to execute the contract. Consent agenda item 8C, approve the final ranking of consultants for continuing consultant building envelope and authorize staff to conduct the contract negotiations with the top-ranked firm, Terracon Consultants Incorporated of Merritt Island, Florida, the #1 ranked firm. Consent agenda item 8D, approve advisability for staff to clarify the regulations relating to perimeter landscaping buffers for single-family subdivisions. Consent agenda item 8E, approve capital outlay project Z01817, monitor mobile command upgrades. Consent agenda item 8F, approve the award of work order number 4 to Barnes, Sparland, and Associates in the amount of $28,833.40 to provide construction administrative service for the service area water, for the South Service Area Water Main Project, and authorize the city manager to execute the work order. Consent agenda item 8G, approve the submission of the application and receipt of funds in the amount of $25,149. Consent agenda item 8H, approve budget amendment and change order number 2 in the amount of $50,454.50 to Gregory Construction of Titusville, Florida, for paving, baffle box adjustments, pipe repair, and utility conflicts needed during the construction. Additionally, authorize the city manager to execute the change order. Consent agenda item 8I, authorize the city manager to sign a grant application to the State of Florida Hazardous Mitigation Grant Program for the purchase and installation of 7 standby lift station generators. Consent agenda item 8J, authorize the city manager to execute the grant agreement with Florida Department of Environmental Protection and approve the attached budget amendment to recognize the grant funds. Consent agenda item 8K, approve the budget amendment in the amount of $25,000 and project creation for the demolition of the Upland building located at Sandpoint Park. Consent agenda item 8L, adopt resolution number 19, 2018, supporting temporary closures of state roads for Red Carpet Run, Friday Night Live, Titusville Christmas Parade, annual North Brevard Martin Luther King Jr. Parade, and the Rotary Chili Cook-Off. Consent agenda item 8M, approve the award of the contract to Massey Constructions of Port Orange, Florida in the amount of $1,251,778.73 for the construction of Hopkins Avenue RRR Improvement Project number FPN 43543015801 from State Road 50 to Grace Street, and authorize the mayor to execute the contract. Consent agenda item 8N, approve advisability for staff to review the current building height regulations throughout the city and make recommendations to the code. Consent agenda item 8O, approve reprogramming of IT funds for project Z01827 SunGuard One Solutions in the amount of $50,000 to fund project IT hardware improvement upgrades to procure needed equipment to transition to the new enterprise software package. And there is one resolution in this, so we'll need roll call, sir.
Okay. I need a motion to approve items B through O.
Move to approve items on the consent agenda, items 8B through O.
And I need a second, please. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. Roll call vote, please, clerk.
Member Diesel?
Yes.
Member Nelson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Johnson?
Yes.
Or Mayor Johnson, sorry. Vice Mayor Behringer?
Yes.
And Member Stokel?
She demoted me. It's all right. Passes unanimously. Next item, ordinances, second reading, public hearing, and related action.
Item 9A is ordinance number 36, 2018, amending the city's billing and collection procedures for stormwater management utility fees. Ordinance number 36, 2018, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances by amending Chapter 21, Article 5, Stormwater Management Utility, specifically by amending Section 21-273, Service Rate Charges, to allow an annual increase in the stormwater service rate by no more than a percentage equal to the Consumer Price Index, not to exceed 3% annually, without requiring notice or public hearing, providing for severability, repeal of conflicting ordinances, and for an effective date. This is the second reading and final public hearing for this ordinance.
On June 12, 2018, City Council approved advisability to allow an annual increase in stormwater service rate not to exceed the Consumer Price Index, CPI, without further individual mailing letter notices, as long as the citizens are notified of rate increases in another manner, i.e. on the utility bill. The first reading was held on July 24, 2018. Changes in CPI are used to assess the price changes associated with the cost of living. CPI is one of the most frequently used statistics for identifying periods of inflation and deflation. In order to proceed, an amendment to the Stormwater Management Utility Ordinance is required. This amendment will allow for an increase in the annual stormwater assessment above a prior year amount by no more than a percentage equal to the consumer price index, but also not to exceed 3% annually, even if the CPI is above 3%. This 3% cap allows for the property owners the availability to budget for future possible fees. And Stormwater Utility, Sandra Rella, and Director Kevin Cook are available to answer any questions that you may have.
Do you have any presentation with this item before we go further? Do you have any presentation?
We had the same presentation from the first reading, if you'd like to go through it again.
No, it's
Yeah,
not.
nothing new.
I got to ask that question. It's perfunctory. Council, any questions of staff?
A pretty simple question, and only because I've been asked this question when they look at these, the very, I think, minor increase. Hurricanes, do they create more stormwater expense? Obviously, there's more stormwater, but is there any expense involved with the hurricanes we've had the last 2 years?
Yeah, we run crews for 24 hours, pretty much from the activation of the EOC through the duration, and the stormwater crews are active in that, between pumping out inlets the entire time, running equipment. They help with tree debris and other things. So yes, there's an increased cost to the emergency operations side.
And all these pumps and everything that we saw spread out throughout Titusville, and I can go into specific areas. I can tell you my mother-in-law's was 6 feet, underwater, and I know the pumps were out there the very next day, and we appreciated that. That's all part of your program there.
Yes, sir. That's all within the.
Just want to get that out there. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? If not, I'll open the public hearing. Clerk, are there any cards on this?
We have one card. It's Carl Krupp.
Good evening, sir. If you'd state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, sir. My name is Carl Krupp. I have property at 612 Garden Street. Like we had came to the board when you guys decided to change this stormwater assessment from your water bill to the tax collectors and tax bill. No one ever accounted for the cost that was going to increase. West Melbourne is approximately the same budget on stormwater. They have to pay the property appraisers almost $70,000 a year for them to process the paperwork. That same fee is also charged by the tax collector because they are the ones actually collecting this tax and giving it to the water department. Like I said last fall, first thing they're going to want to do is start raising the rates. They should not be allowed to have up to a 3% rate increase or any rate increase without a public hearing so that the citizens of Titusville can come in and state if they agree or disagree with it. The other issue is I have other properties in Brevard County. All my other properties, the stormwater is assessed by property size of house. My house here in Titusville is on 0.15 acres and is 900 square foot. That property doesn't have the same storm runoff as a half acre with a 4,000 square foot house and driveways. It's an easy computer program. County does it, Melbourne does it, everyone else. Why don't we assess water bills, the stormwater runoff, at what the actual properties are, not just blanket? People with the smaller properties are paying the same as someone with a larger property and larger home. That's not fair. And that's why I come in here and I do not wish to see them give them the authority to raise their rate at will, basically.
Mr. Cook, can you address firstly the size?
Yeah, the city's methodology for billing stormwater for residential is this equalized. Stormwater is based on an equivalent residential unit, so it's an average lot, an average home. So the residentials are assessed the same. The commercials are assessed on a more intricate level to where they are computed individually for their impacts because they have a larger impact, more coverage of acreage. You can go to more complicated methodologies that incorporate more time consumption, more cost to generate that. may not see a lot of change in the structure of what's billed. I can't speak to that because I don't know what the consultant fees would be to change methodology. But that methodology is a normalized methodology to say that residentials, because of the way they are constructed, the way they not necessarily standardized, but a residential impact is very similar. Commercials, you cannot make that statement. Walmart's impact is very different from another commercial facility. So most jurisdictions use an ERU as a system. Some do credit down for multifamilies. They may give you 3/4 credits. They may use different things. Some have different tiers, but equalizing a residential is a common occurrence.
So there is a difference between the sizes of properties. It's just how they.
If they are a straight single-family residence, they are
Yeah.
billed one billing code. If they have a pond that's been approved, they're billed to a reduced billing code. But each residential home is billed the same.
So it's not the size, it's the
It's not the size, it's
residential.
what their use is. It's the fact they are a residential home instead of a commercial facility.
And is this commonly done that way?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's common. You'll see some jurisdictions where I worked previously, our neighboring city would allow you to do a reduction on a residential after you got an engineer and a surveyor and you went through a process. City of Augusta. We chose, where I was, we chose not to. The city of Titusville does not have an appeal process for the residentials, aside from looking at credits for ponds. It's really just a complexity level. You can see cities that go through very massive complexity billing with the same billing output. It just is going to differentiate and shift within the system. So you may save some on the smaller house, you're going to put it on the larger, you're going to put it on the commercials, and that balancing is going to take consulting fees and things that may offset everything we're trying to.
And how does the county compute their?
I'm not positive, I haven't looked at theirs this year, but they might have a tier. Some places have a tier system where if your lot's this size, considered small, medium, or large, they have a different tier for the residential. I'm not positive if our county does it, but I know a lot of areas do that way, and a lot of areas do it like we do, where it's just one for every residential.
Can you research that and let us know? All right. We'll look into it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And if you'd like, you can address the question with regard to increasing rates without a public hearing.
Do you want to hear?
Was one of the gentleman's questions. What we propose is to notify the citizenry through the utility bill of the date at which this presentation would take place, and the council would make a decision on a rate increase. The rate increase would not go without the city council's approval in a public hearing. It wouldn't be in a format in which you're getting an individual letter mailed to you. It would be in a format that on your bill you'll be disclosed that the city is proposing a 2.5% rate increase. This is the date we'll be hearing that proposal. Currently, you see the water department does theirs tomorrow at budget hearing. Solid Waste does theirs today at this process. So it'll be a similar presentation of the rates. The council would have the discussion whether they're appropriate. With the current proposal, we would be allowed to take that to 3%, or the lesser the CPI if it was lower, with the council having full control of that rate structure still, with having been done in the public. The only part taking out is the actual letter mailed individually.
Okay. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, sir.
Thank you
I do
very
have
much.
one other question, if I may.
Okay.
The pumps that you guys bring out for stormwater, what kind of fuel do you guys run in this? I know they are diesel. Do you normally get the diesel at the yard at Singleton?
Yeah, we use our fueling facility.
Okay. There is a way for the city to lower their budget well over $100,000 a year on fuel cost alone. And I have talked to Ms. Nelson briefly. I'd like to get with you later because I can show you how to cut your cost by 40 cents per gallon.
I can address that now if you'd like. I believe you're discussing using off-road diesel.
Yes, sir.
We have looked into that. That is not viable for our system. Primary diesel of ours is vocational truck. We pay the diesel fees. We don't have an increased fee. We looked into this. I believe you contacted my office. I looked into this previously, and it is not a savings of that nature for us to run off-road diesel. We could use off-road diesel on our backhoes and our pumps.
Fire trucks.
Not sure.
Well, yeah.
Fire truck. We stock 10,000 gallons because we run solid waste at a massive amount of fuel. So our pump system and the convenience of us pulling out of that pump storage, particularly in emergency when we're on backup generators and that's what we have stored, it's just not feasible for us to carry secondary storage for off-road diesel, and that's not our primary users. The city's users are on-road vocational diesel users.
Yes, but there is actually the diesel, the off-road diesel. There is no difference between that and clear diesel. They come out of the same tank. In 92 or 99, it was rated by the federal government that the dye is added at the fuel rack. It is not, there is no difference in the fuel versus what I put in my pickup truck, except it's red in color, so DOT knows that you're running a fuel that is 40 cents a gallon cheaper because it's not paying a road tax. By doing that, now you don't have to turn it over to the accounting. They don't have to try to process to get that 40 cents a gallon back from the federal government, where you have to wait to get that money back. And that money goes back to the Titusville General Fund, not back to your departments.
We looked into this request with our fuel invoicing. I pulled them, and it's not that amount. It's just not. We can look further into the use of a different diesel supply if the council wishes. I still have, for my trucks, we need 10,000 gallons of our own road diesel. And that's my primary user. My pump systems, my backhoes don't use a fraction of what we put out through solid waste alone. But I'll be happy to look into that.
I think
we're not a private entity, so the taxing is different on us. I can go back to our suppliers and review that.
If you will look into that, I believe we have consensus of council on that. Yes.
The local supplier here that has both the dye diesel and the clear diesel is Watkins Oil. And if you go in and look, a consumer can go in and buy either one. The dye diesel is 40 cents, on average 40 cents a gallon cheaper. So, I mean, I worked for them for a short time, and I delivered to the city of Titusville 3,000 gallons a week. That's about 157,000 gallons. Just the initial drop is over almost $63,000. That is a savings that you don't have to do any more processing for.
We all have agreed that we're going to look into that. Sounds very interesting.
I would ask one thing, though. When you look at what Brevard County is doing, can you give us an idea of what it would do to the different costs? I.e., a small house would probably pay this much, a medium house would pay this much, a large house would pay this much.
Yeah, we can review what the county does as far as a billing structure.
I think that'd be helpful.
Okay. Clerk, are there any other cards on this item?
Did you have to submit a card to be able to speak?
Yes, sir.
I guess I'm excluded. Why was I sent the notice?
Go put, if you'll promise you'll fill out a card after you speak, I'll let you speak now. How's that?
Very good. Stormwater.
Sir,
Yes.
wait till you get up here and
sorry.
give your name and address for
Absolutely.
the record, please.
My name's Carl Hansick, address 1705 Harrison, Titusville. I've lived up and down the eastern seaboard. I have never been in any town that had a stormwater bill, nor do I on any of my other properties. Having said that, we have a stormwater bill and a proposal before us to be able to do a carte blanche 3% increase up to CPI per year. Did you do that on this item for the fixing transmissions at AMCO? No, sir, you didn't. You said it's a one-year contract with the ability to renew it for a period of 4 years. May I suggest that that would be a very good idea in this case? Prove your worth. Not just, you have no competition. There's somebody else besides AMCO that fixes transmission. There's other Ford dealerships. You guys can pick between them. You have a stated monopoly and you're exercising it quite well. We don't have another private contractor to go to. We should not give them carte blanche ability to upgrade this. Now let's talk about what we're doing here. I will fill out the card. I got this notice to come to this stormwater meeting. I got this notice to come to this stormwater meeting. I got this notice, this notice, this notice, and this notice to come to this stormwater meeting. 6 different notices. The only difference between them is that, I'll let you see it. One was done with a font that apparently almost
Sir.
nobody can read, and then it was done with something like Times New Roman or Calibri.
Sir,
Yes, sir.
they were done incorrectly the first time, the wrong font. We didn't order them in that font. We made them go back because people were having difficulty in reading
I
it.
was too. I had to use my old man glasses.
Well, that's why we had them do this again.
Right, but I got 6 of these notices.
I have no idea why you got 6 of them.
You just saw them. They'll have my name on them.
Are they all the same address, or?
No. Well, they are all the same address. You're right. Yeah, they're all the same.
That was a question. I wasn't right or wrong.
You're right. So the question is, what is that times envelopes and stamps and postage? What are we doing to more effectively spend the money that we have instead of just asking for more?
Well, your 6 goes down to 3 because 3 of them were not paid.
Did we
for
make the
by
printer
some-
pay for the postage and reprinting on all three?
We did, yes.
Who was the person who proofread these for starters?
That was me, and I proofread the second letter
I'll be
that
happy
you
to
got.
grant you my
you asked
proofreading.
her a question.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry.
It's a
Excuse me.
courtesy, please.
Yes, no. I proofread and I approved. That second letter you got is the one I approved. The printer admitted their error from the time that it was approved to when the printer, the printing came out. Somehow the font got changed and no one noticed it until the letters got sent, which is why when they sent the second letter at no cost to the city, postage, printing, everything.
That's a help. I'm glad we did part of that. So the first one wasn't proofread. Is that what we're saying?
No, the first
No, it
one
was.
was proofread. The error was made between the approved proof and the printer's production. His software changed the font, which is why they were held liable, and at their expense, mailed out the billing again.
All right.
Now, if I
Again-
can answer why you have multiple bills, it's either multiple properties. We pull the tax appraiser's database. So everyone in there that gets a tax bill, they got a stormwater bill. Their database incorrectness or duplications, we still had to send it out based upon their database. Because when they load this assessment to the tax database, it's got to match. So we don't fully control that. That's why we've gotten some returned because the ownership changed since the taxing authority hasn't caught up. So
you think it was proper that I got the 6 notices?
what I'm saying is we cannot control how many notices are sent if that's how the tax.
Okay, but that wasn't the question.
You
Do
would
you
likely
think it's
get-
proper that I got 6 notices?
I believe it's proper that you got
Do you think it's
3.
efficient? Do you think we can improve it? Come
we-
on, we all know the answer. Yes.
Sir, this action we're
Sir.
doing tonight is improving this process by eliminating
Getting close to
that.
being out of order here, sir.
Excuse me.
You can ask a question, don't berate it.
All right, we'll ask another question. I've been sitting here listening to the other people. This nice lady here talked about a pond on her.
Sir, you have to talk about your situation, no one else's.
Why are we not using the pumps that we have to clear up situations like this, young ladies?
That's not germane to this issue.
It's part of the stormwater people. It's part of what they're doing or not doing.
You want
Well,
to answer the question? Go ahead.
The primary reason why we wouldn't use pump there is the same reason why we can't maintain it. We use pumps when they're on the public facilities to clear roads. Our primary use of pumps has been to pump water to make sure subdivisions that are in the floodplain remain dry. The circumstance that was described is the maintenance of a ditch area. There's probably not enough water in there to warrant a pump being there. So not every circumstance in the city that involves stormwater would have a pump applicability. We, in some cases, run 3 pumps at Senior Center because of effects on Baker subdivision. We may run pumps when we had issues around Laceda. There are circumstances that require the pumps to come into effect. It's not the circumstance that was described was needing a backhoe to expand a private drainage area.
Did you say that if I had a pond on my property, a retention water pond, that entitles me to a stormwater discount?
Yes, if you have a permitted, St. John's permitted pond, you're entitled to a discount, yes.
Speak up, I only heard you.
Oh, how do you get
Ma'am.
That facility is not permitted.
Okay. So, I would like to see us not approve this carte blanche 3% increase, not from year to year. Let it be reviewed every year. Let there be options brought before it, because we do have a stated monopoly here. We don't have anybody else we can turn to for this. And I really think that we could do a much better job than this. And this is just tip of the iceberg. This is just what I'm aware of. I have no doubt that if I brought in my process analysis people and sat down within their organization, we could probably find a lot of ways to save money. One last question. You said there's equivalent rate units for the housing. Okay, fine. Is that the same For a condo as for a house? An apartment as for a house?
No, because condos and houses, a condo is not the same as a single family. So
what,
Condos are half an ERU. So what single-family homes are 1 ERU, condos are half.
condos are half? Interesting.
Sir, your time is up.
Thank you very much. Do you need to recover those, or do you want to keep them for further evidence?
If you'd like them back, we'll be.
That's all
glad
right.
to give
I'll
them
fill
to
out the
you.
card for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Close the public hearing. Clerk, are there any more cards on this? No. I'll close the public hearing. Council? Yes.
I just want to clarify in case there is confusion, the voting on us not sending out, as Mr. Cook said, this will still be reviewed by council for us to still vote on. Members of the public will still be able to come. This actually is saving us money from having to send out a separate bill each time now. So I just want to make that clear for the record. From my perspective, this is cost saving. We will still go through the same process. We are now just putting it in their water bill or some other mailer that we're sending out already to them rather than having to do a separate one. So just wanted to state that.
Yes, thank you. I'd also like to make it clear that although there were 6 sent to him, 3 were not charged, so there was 2 actually that were not improperly done because it's a part of the system that whatever the clerk, well, not the clerk, but the property appraiser has, they have to send it out for that. So that's not that everybody got 3 of them or everybody got 2 of them. It's, he happened to have an unusual situation, so I think that's clear.
And the only thing,
Member Nelson.
only thing I would ask is, in terms of cost savings, do we have an idea of what it costs to send out these notices?
Yeah, with staff time and then the mailings, we estimate about 12,000 just to send out the individual letters.
Okay.
Okay, any further council discussion? I see no lights. I'll take a motion on this. Somebody like to make a motion?
Motion to approve ordinance number 36, 2018.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, clerk, roll call, please.
Member Nelson?
Yes.
Mayor Johnson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Behringer?
Yes.
Member Stokel?
Yes.
Member Diesel?
Yes.
Passes unanimously. Next item, 9B, City Attorney.
Actually, this is a resolution.
Oh,
There is
sorry.
not an ordinance title. I'll be glad to read the title of the resolution if you desire.
Yes, sir, please.
This is Resolution Number 18, 2018, certifying the rate and annual stormwater utility assessment roll. A resolution of the City of Titusville, Florida, confirming and certifying the rate and annual stormwater utility assessment rolls for the municipal fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2018, and forwarding the same to the tax collector's office for collection, utilizing the uniform method of collecting non-ad valorem special assessments levied within the incorporated area of the city, as authorized under Section 197.3632 Florida statutes, adopting findings of fact and providing for an effective date.
This resolution certifies the stormwater utility assessment rolls for the municipal fiscal year beginning October 1, 2018, and authorizes the mayor to sign the certificate of non-ad valorem assessment roll for transmittal to the tax collector's office. And Mr. Cook and Sandy Reller are here to answer any questions that you may have for this public hearing.
Council, any questions for staff? I don't see any. I'll open the public hearing. Clerk, are there any cards on this item?
We have 2 cards. It's Carl Krupp and Andrew Connors.
Please come. Well, one of them has declined. I'm not sure which one.
Carl.
Carl
Is there a-
declined.
And then the next one was Andrew Connors, looks like.
I don't see him here, I guess. I don't see anybody holding up their hand, so close the public hearing. Council discussion? I see none. Ask for a motion.
Move to approve resolution number 18-2018, certifying the rate and annual stormwater utility assessment roll.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, roll call, please.
Mayor Johnson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Behringer?
Yes.
Member Stokel?
Yes.
Member Diesel?
Yes.
Member Nelson?
Passes unanimously. Next item, please.
Next item is 9C, ordinance number 37, 2018, plant nurseries and community commercial. This is ordinance 37, 2018, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances to create a pilot program for plant nurseries as a limited use in community commercial CC zoning, amending Section 2854 use table, amending Section 28215 plant nursery, providing for severability, repeal of conflicting ordinances, an effective date, and incorporation into the land development regulations.
This is your first first reading and first public hearing. The second reading and final public hearing are scheduled for August 28, 2018 at 6:30. Ms. Busaka is available to answer any questions you may have on this first reading.
Council, any questions for Ms. Busaka? See none. Clerk, are there any speakers by card on this issue? No, sir. Okay. We have no vote. It's the first reading. Next item, please, 10A.
I have a question.
Yes.
Ms. Busaka, with working on this with Ms. Tooming, who I see is here, were there any issues that arose moving forward as we go into second reading?
I don't know. I reached out to Ms. Tooming, and she didn't have an opportunity to get back to me, so I don't know.
Okay. I don't know, Ms. Tooming, if you were able to speak. I did want to know if you had any issues with what was proposed and amended for this.
I'll fill out a card. Okay. Patricia Tooming, 1780 Gulfview Drive. The only issue I have still stands is that it says a violation. That's my only problem with the entire thing. I can abide by any of it. I can do everything that you want, anything that you ask in that email. Just that the wording of a violation is still.
Do you understand that when you get that, you get to answer that violation? Nothing takes place without you going through the process.
I just want to make sure of that because, you know, anything.
I'm telling you that.
I understand. And I do. But the problem is that anything in writing supersedes anything verbally. And therein lies mine.
This is public record. And
Yes,
it's being recorded.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you want to call for the recording, you can go down to the clerk's office.
I can pull it up on YouTube. Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's all I can tell you.
Okay.
It's as good as written.
Okay. That's all I wanted to know. That's my only issue with it.
Great.
Where is that you're seeing?
Excuse me?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Can I?
Yes,
Yes.
please.
So I have the proposal up here. Where's the exact issue that, thank you.
I can help with that.
Okay.
Do you have it in front of you? No, I don't have it in front
I
of me.
can help you. There's language that says, in the case of a finding of a health violation by the Health Department or a finding by the Titusville Code Board that a code violation exists, the pilot program will be ended and she'll have 10 days to remove that. And Ms. Tooming, I can't speak for the Health Department, but we put that in because there are no bathroom facilities except on adjoining, which shouldn't be an issue when you have your agreement that you can use that facility. But the process to go a finding of the code board, they would notify you that there's an issue. They would give you some time to come into compliance, fix the issue. If you did not, they would schedule you for a code board. You would be able to go in front of the code board and make your plea. They may give you additional time. They may say not, but it is not a overnight process, and it is not someone walking out, writing you a ticket and saying you have 10 days. It is time to come into compliance before you even have to go to the code board.
Okay.
That's why it says code board rather than just a notice of violation.
I understand.
Okay.
It's just a confusion of, you know, because everything that's written is superseded by anything verbal. So when it's written someplace and it's uncomfortable for me, I have to bring it up.
Of course, and if you want me to, I can send you a copy of information about how the code board works. That might be more helpful to you, so you can see that as well.
That'd be fine.
Sure.
And then my last follow-up question would be, are there any code violation concerns that you have that
No.
you may hit or anything?
No.
Okay.
None.
Okay, then I think we're good. I
Yeah.
think we got something good here, so, all right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Wait,
Ms.
wait,
Finley.
wait, I have a question too, if you don't
Yes,
mind.
Mr.
I'm
Diesel.
I'm on the button.
There you are.
As I read this, and I can see your concern, being kind of a rule book guy, some of these little words can really make you nervous, and one of those would be that the pilot program will be terminated. It sounds to me like we're okay with that. I would maybe look at the possibility of will be terminated if not resolved, or something along those ways, because it does look like in writing that if there's a violation, will be terminated. I'd almost like to see something in there that simply adds, if not satisfied, or something along those lines. I'd also want to speak to the health department issues, because in my previous life as a facility assistant principal, we had the health department come in quite often. Overall, we did very well, but when there was an issue, it was one of those things that they'd be back in 30 days. And if you didn't satisfy it, as I use that term again, then we had issues. So the point I'm making is I don't see anything here that's real concerning, except the possibility, you know, and again, Ms. Busaka and the mayor have made it clear, I think, that, you know, you just go forward and fix it, and there'll be time for that. I wouldn't mind seeing an addition, though, if not satisfied.
It just seems like it's kind of open for interpretation, and, you know,
Well,
it's just, it just doesn't feel good.
It does say the pilot program will be terminated.
Yes.
I would like
It's-
to see that followed with, if not remedied,
It's
or
almost
if
like
not
somebody can
satisfied.
walk in, give me a violation, I have to close the gate behind me, and I have to be out in 10 days.
That's not going to
what-
happen, ma'am. I understand
I
how you
understand where you're
feel,
at.
but we're
Everybody
all
here is
trying
going
to
with
tell
you.
you the same
Ms.
thing.
I've gotten,
Busaka's done
no,
great,
and
but
I'm just answering Mr. Diesel, you know, as to how this is perceived.
Yeah,
And I understand what you're saying, Mr. Johnson.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Clerk, excuse me, one second. Clerk, City Attorney, would you look at that wording? Can that be changed? Was that a major issue?
Certainly, I'd be glad to look at that wording.
Okay.
Just so you know, for the process, if we receive a complaint of a code violation, or a code officer sees a violation on site, he then is to contact the property owner, and he puts a notice of violation on the site, and by statute required to give them a reasonable time to come into compliance. In the event they do not come into compliance with that violation, as noted by the code enforcement officer within the time given, he then can serve them with a complaint of violation and a date to attend code board. At the code board hearing, now, and we're really talking usually about 30, 45 days minimum for that process. They then come to code board, and the code officer presents his case for finding a violation. Then the owner is allowed to address the board as well. At that point, the board can either find a violation and then give them time to come in compliance, and then they come back to code board, and if they're not, then they enter a judgment. As worded, as soon as that code board at the initial code board hearing finds a violation by the code board, then the pilot program would be terminated on that site. So when you go to code board, if they can find a violation, but before they fine you, they could give you time to come in compliance before they start imposing fines. Or at the code board hearing, after speaking to the property owner, they could agree to table the item and give you more time. But that's how that process works.
Okay, thank you.
So whatever council's pleasure is, I can certainly look at that language.
That's where we were.
Can I reply? Yeah, I would like to, as again, if it's me, it says will be terminated, and I reread it again. In case of a finding, bottom line, will be terminated. I'd like to say if there is a finding, will be terminated if finding not remedied, or satisfied, or whatever the word may be.
I think he gets the idea. But
Well, he just asked me to clarify.
Okay.
Right, you can have find a violation and then go back to code board, and then they can actually enter a judgment of a fine on the property. So you can look at dates as far as finding a violation by the board, and if they don't come to compliance, or you can look at the date that a fine is imposed. So there's different dates of board, actions a board can take.
Okay? And, Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Just for specificity, sir, in short, my hope would be to replace will with may or can by decision from city council. So remove the shall, will, must, replace with can, may, pending decision of city council. That's what I would prefer to see, but I would bring that back with whatever recommendations. And I think it does two things. One is that because it's a test program, the policy, I think, is in development for what we're trying to achieve down the road. So the wills and musts, or may, right, the wills and musts and shalls are after the pilot program. Once we've hammered it out, because there may be a hiccup or two, that's when we apply that threshold and that hard standard. I think from a comfortable level, I would be comfortable that if something came up, it comes back to us and we go as a council, do we want to continue this program or not? And that is an independent decision. And I think that say may or can, pending council, gives us some flexibility in there. So. Thank you.
Thank you. Clerk, are there any other cards on this? Okay. There's no vote on this. It's first reading. Next item is 10A. Mr. City Attorney.
10A is first reading of ordinance number 38, 2018, flagpoles and urban village zoning. Ordinance number 38, 2018, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances to clarify height limits and to permit additional height of flagpoles in urban village zoning districts by amending Chapter 28 zoning, specifically amending Section 28, 328 Urban Village UV, providing for severability, repeal of conflicting ordinances, an effective date, and incorporation into the code.
This is your first reading of ordinance 38, 2018. Your second reading and final public hearing will be August 28, 2018 at 6:30. And Ms. Bisacca is available to answer any questions that you may have.
Council have any questions on this one? I see none. Clerk, are there any cards on this? Yes, sir. Okay. There's no vote. It's the first reading. Next item. Which is what?
Next item is ordinance number 39, 2018, timeframes for site plans. Ordinance number 39, 2018, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances to clarify timeframes related to review and approval of site plans by amending Chapter 34 procedure, specifically creating Section 34, 217 timeframes, providing for severability, repeal of conflicting ordinances, an effective date, and incorporation into the code.
This is your first reading of ordinance 39, 2018. Your second reading and final public hearing will be August 28th at 6:30 p.m.
Council have any questions? Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Are previous plans that have been approved grandfathered?
Once the plan's approved.
Right.
And then they will have 2 years to get a building permit. Once the building permit is issued, then they will have the timeframes under that building permit. This is actually a little more lenient, although the code is not very clear. Right now, they've been operating under about an 18-month permit, and we thought that 24 months was appropriate, and it's also clear. So we think that this is to the advantage of people who've invested this much in getting a site plan approved.
I guess where I'm going is I'm incredibly comfortable with what's written and where we're going. What I'm looking for is that if there is a property owner that has been out there for X amount of years.
Yes, this would.
I don't even know if that's feasible. But what I'm saying is we're 7 years into this and we're coming back and we go, oh my God, I missed it.
If there's 7 years, then they probably have expired.
Right. Okay. All right.
Because, you know, codes change, but we think that a 2-year time frame is, as I said, we're operating now under a squishy language that says 18 months.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Clerk, are there any cards on this item? Okay, it's first reading, no vote. Next item is old business. We've already talked about A. New business.
Yes, sir. We have a staff presentation on solid waste rate review for the enterprise fund. Mr. Cook will be coming forward to present.
Okay.
And we do have a presentation for this. As City Manager said, this is just the annual rate review for the solid waste division. Can I run through a couple of different items for you, just our observations of last year with regard to our collections and the changes in the system, our proposed budget, which you've been provided, we'll have a workshop on tomorrow. Projected rate increase needs, some strategies, the service impact, service rate comparisons, and then recommendation. Just looking at the last year, residential customers are up slightly, about 0.5%. Commercial cubic yard usage, this is our billed usage, up nearly 2%, and our dumpster rentals are up about 0.6. Collections the last 12 months are up about 2.4%. Just to give you an idea, that incorporates also the hurricane debris, calculates into our totals. Doesn't have as much impact as we have had consecutive hurricane years. But to let you know, the city's current recycling rate the last 12 months was around 20%.
I just want to really point out that we had 2 consecutive years of 2 hurricanes. So when he says it's a 2.4% increase, for Matthew, it was a gigantic increase over that 1 year. So it's still a substantial amount.
Yeah. Yeah. Along the same measures, you know, each hurricane usually costs us about a year's worth of collection or close to it. Taking a look at a little bit of detail on our proposed budget. Comparing to the adopted budget the current year, our revenues are up about 2%. We are proposing a 3% rate increase across the board for all levels of service. The division expenses are down about 1.6 total. The refuse division is down about 7 3/4. A lot of that is in adjustments to our fleet cost. Recycling is up. The trend in recycling right now is there's not a lot of buyers for it at a good rate, so the cost to process recycling is outpacing what you can collect and certainly can't sell. That's across the board. Waste Management is our group that does our recycling for us, and if that company can't find the buyers, they're just not in the market. Non-departmental is up about 5.8%. Currently, looking at where we sit with the proposed budget, we're sitting on a reserve about 12%. We are outstanding on reimbursements from IRMA. We've received our Matthew for debris, but we are out of pocket on IRMA still. To give you an idea of IRMA, there's nearly $300,000 in fees to the county alone for use of the mulching facility. So looking at kind of a 5-year snapshot of what we're looking for, or looking at 3% the current year, 2% the following, and reducing from there. It's pretty good. The proposals in the front end are to bring our working capital up to try to get to a 60, 90-day reserve, try to build in for that need to pay out again for hopefully not to have to pay for another hurricane, but that's what we do want to plan for. So just to give you an idea of where the budget goes, just giving you a comparison, looking at what our service areas are and then what we budget and then where our tons are assigned. You can see our commercial is our primary, both our budget and our tonnage. Go through the dumpster system. Our residential is a single and multi. Run right behind it, a little heavier tonnage than what their budget. Recycle, budgetarily, is a large expense and the tonnage is lower. Yard debris, again, affected by the hurricanes. It bumps up the tonnage that goes through it. Bulk collections being collections of the items that you put on the side, the couches, the dishwashers, things of that nature, run about same on budget and tonnage. And street sweeping, is running also the same, one of our lower cost items. So to give you a comparison of how we compare on the residential side to our neighboring communities here in Brevard County, these rate structures for the other communities are their current year and don't have their proposals, so a lot of them are shifting upward. But we're in the mid-range, slightly higher range for our rates on the residential side, and this is a complete rate. Commercial side, we're at the very low end of the commercial charges to the dumpsters, very favorable to the business communities and what they pay compared to the other cities. Just want to give you a kind of snapshot of what the impact means to go 3% on a residential home. Will be a $3.84 increase on the year. For those that are in multifamily using our cart service, because they get a 3-quarter build, they'll be $2.88. And a 8 cubic yard dumpster with 6 picks a week is our largest commercial user, and that's about a $300 increase to that particular user. One thing I just wanted to add to, Solid Waste runs the street sweeping program, which not only keeping the streets clean, that generates nitrogen and phosphorus removal for the Indian River. And in the last year, we collected around 1,500 tons of material from the streets, and it equates to almost 1,700 pounds of nitrogen and a little over 1,000 of phosphorus. So a few years ago, we implemented 2 street sweepers, and we partner with Stormwater and a 50-50 share on this. And it's been very productive. It's a good item for the river each year to have this amount of cleanup going through it. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Go right ahead.
And just, because these are big numbers, and we're talking about an increase, just ballpark, average guy running a truck, how much is he making right about now? Starting guy. Right, okay, all right. And the reason I highlight that is that these are very large numbers, but in practical application, they're big pieces of machinery. But the guys running it, I mean, they God bless them for what they do, you know, because you never think twice that they're coming. And that's a credit for what we do as a city.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
No problem. Member Stokel?
And this may be more for tomorrow. Can you just elaborate on what the non-departmental increase would be for, and then the projected rate needs going from the 3%, 2%, so on? Do you know what the rate increases were for the past 5 years? Did we go up each year? Kind of touch on that if you have that information.
Sure. The non-departmental is where, and you see it throughout the enterprise funds and the general fund. It's basically where everything is housed that is not to our operation. It's the cost to run the employee clinic, unemployment, OPEB. So just looking at the proposed budget, we saw an increase in some of these line items. Some of that is our equipment purchasing, which is housed there as well. We do have about a 15% increase in our transfers that go to the general fund, to the MIS fund. Things such as our general liability insurance, those are all housed within. The OPEB's funding for health went up 2.25% for this fund alone. So that's where our non-departmentals sit. As far as our historical, we have had increases the last, sorry, I'm trying to get to that page. Back to my history. We usually run about 3%, and I can think back probably the last 4 years we've had a consistency on that. We did have a year in which we froze the rates. Solid Waste had a buildup of working capital. We froze the rates, allowed the buildup to stabilize down, have brought them back. The comparable of CPI is around 2.9 at the end of July. For the general CPI, the index for garbage collection is close to 4. I bring that up because our waste management for the county contract indexes versus that index, not a normal CPI. So we have inflationary items that we're pacing to about the same. But the goal is, and the chart showed for long term, if we can stay the course, we will be able to give some rate relief later in that programming if things continue as expected.
Any other questions? I see no lights. Petitions and requests from the public present. Is there anybody who would like to speak?
Yes, sir. If you could have council accept the report.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Motion to accept the report.
I'd move to accept the report on the solid waste rate review.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Now, petitions and requests. Ma'am?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I admire your ability to sit here for this long without going crazy. My name is Jerry Abramovs, and I live 7455 Turkey Point Drive, which is not in this city. But I had emailed all of you 5 members about the cottage food industry, and Ms. Nelson threw it back at me and said, could I please do a presentation, which was not what I intended to have happen. But
you'll do a great job.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So I learned a lot in the process. And I handed a packet for each of you. Do you have it already? Okay. So I found out that the City of Cocoa has an open for business on its website. And that's your first page. And on the left-hand side, it says the 8 steps for opening a new business. And what I liked about that was it was so consumer-friendly or public-friendly. I thought that was really, really good. Then, so the 8 steps, when I contacted the different departments that speak into business licensing, what they sent me to was the 8 steps that are on the COCO website. From that, I found out that they're for a cottage food industry, and do you all know what that is? It's where someone cooks at home. Mm-hmm. Okay, so there is no hazardous waste, there is no health department issue, and there is no state business regulation issue, because I contacted each one of them. They said, no, we don't touch that at all. So it's actually a very simple process. So, that involves getting a business tax receipt for the city and then for the county, and all that's required in, so this is just me still learning. All that's required for that is their ID and a statement from whoever owns the property that it's okay with them, which is pretty simple, okay? So the next thing I have in the packet is the cottage food industry information. When you had the poverty workshop, one of the speakers at the poverty workshop said that they had found out that if a family that is borderline on the poverty level, if they could raise their income $3,000 a year, it would take them out of that crisis condition. That's $3,000 net. And last year, I guess it was, the Florida State up the cap on cottage food industry from $15,000 to $50,000. May I have more time?
Would you like more time?
Yes, I would love more time.
2 minutes?
Yes. I'm almost done.
2 minutes.
3 minutes.
Have a motion?
Yeah.
Two.
3, okay.
Okay. Do I have a second? Second. A motion and a second.
Thank you.
All those, you gotta let me go through this.
I know, I understand.
All those in favor say yes. Yes. And the opposed, like sign, passes. Go.
Thank you. So with the cap being at $50,000, and that's a gross income, so if they even make half of that in net income, they could have the possibility of earning $25,000 working out of their own kitchen. So I think it's something that it's a streamlined process, and I think it would be good for you all to be aware of it. And I know that you're very proactive at bringing in big business, and that the trickle down will eventually get to those who are borderline. But I think this would be a way that you could see them raising it, and if your website kind of reflected that you're open for business, I think that would be really good. And that's it. I'm done.
Thank you, ma'am. Hold on one second.
Yes.
City Manager, would you look into that and see what?
Sure, absolutely.
You bet. And would you wait for, if you don't mind, because I want to ask you a question about our other interaction with,
sure.
With this lady is very active in our community, I can tell you that. I don't know you for a long time, but I'm very impressed, ma'am.
Well, praise the Lord.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
No further questions.
Any questions on this? It's all good.
Nope.
Yes.
You did good.
Thank you.
Okay. Mayor's report. You have my written report. Council, does anybody have any report they would like to make? I did. You were first.
Yes,
you were first. I look that way.
There were multiple items. One is discussed from a previous meeting. Member Stokel is the appointee for the Space Coast League of Cities. Last night was my last meeting, so I have officially resigned from the board, and so that is it. So I was just communicating that. So, ma'am, that one is for you. Thank you for your service. The next one is actually
go
just
to the mayor's quarterly meeting down in Melbourne the other day.
Yeah.
Just to say hello to everybody.
Oh, that'd be good.
Nice meeting.
Just some notes from last night's meeting, though, for take up for action item at some point in time. One is that the league's priorities for this upcoming year, they're requesting city input. So I'm sure we'll get something reflecting what it is we want to do from the city up and coming.
Somebody approached me at another meeting I was at, and I asked them to send some information on it because I wasn't quite clear what he was talking about at the time.
Sure.
So I imagine that's what it was, though.
I believe that, and our priority is to be sent down. They mash them all together and see what comes out on top as a delegation.
I haven't gotten anything from him yet, but it's been fairly recent that I spoke to
3
him.
days? 3 days?
No, it wasn't that one. It was another meeting.
Okay.
It wasn't, he wasn't at that meeting.
Additionally, and speaking of Lagoon, Dr. DeFries came and he spoke about the Lagoon and about where they're at, and I'm proud to say that the comprehensive plan that they are rolling out, I think, is going to be looking for municipal support sometime later in this year through adoption of resolution or civil and so on. So the plan is available online. It is lengthy in nature. It's actually very interesting. But as far as getting ahead of it, it may be an opportunity to research some of that prior to its arrival. There are so many different components to it. His recommendation was we might do some of the same stuff. We may do what's right for a community, but do something. And that's a really refreshing approach to tackle problems. So that was positive. And I'll just pass along that would be coming up. Beyond that, I think that is all I have for tonight. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to add to that. Speaking of Dr. DeFries, I got an interesting email from a gentleman that lives at Harbor Point, and he's working with the zoo to do a shoreline restoration project 300 feet along the riverfront in front of Harbor Point. They did go down and did some diving to see if this was a good place for an oyster reef. He actually found stone crabs down there.
Yeah, the river's apparently loaded with them right now, which is always kind of funny.
Yeah.
I don't know. The stone crab was never there for years and years and years, and since we've been having these problems, they've proliferated.
Well, I will tell you an interesting story that when I was a kid, Laura Lee and I found a stone crab in the river, and we sold it to her dad for 10 cents.
Really? Did you split the money?
Split the money. But
she still has it. That's
I still have it. But apparently, yeah, we had lots of stone crabs out there. But it's nice to know they found some oysters, they found some stone crabs, they found some seagrass growing. So we are looking a little better slowly.
Seems that way, and that's good. We still got a long way to go, though, I'm afraid.
We do.
Okay. Member Diesel.
Yeah, briefly, I just wanted to point out that and congratulate Pastor Clay on putting together I don't want to call it a peace rally, but a peace gathering at Antioch Church. And Member Nelson was there as well, and it was my honor to be there. And I just am proud of the effort that the community and the leaders in the community are making. And I think anything we can do to be a part of it or to help lead it, it's just outstanding. So I thought that was just it was Sunday, I don't know, I got in there just a little bit late, but I think it started at 4 and went to about 6:30, maybe 7. So
I was
a
late
lot
too.
of great words.
I was late too.
Yeah.
I think I was at another church that night.
Probably were.
The New Love Church on Garden Street, they're just opened. I was at that. Yeah. Coincidentally.
I was going to say Chief Lau spoke, and he did a wonderful job. Wonderful job. Yeah, he really did. I will add that Friday, we have a meeting to sit down and figure out the next phase of the Carter House and what is getting done next as far as renovation.
I didn't hear.
The Carter House,
Carter House?
which is on Grannis, which would become a Boys and Girls Club.
Mhm.
I saw Joe Robinson this morning. I talked to the people at Lowe's, talked to Don Mount. They're all meeting to figure out what has to be done first and come up with a date to start.
That's great. It's a great
So,
organization.
yeah.
Super. Anything else? I got a little number. Member Diesel, are you up again, or is that? No, that's my fault. Okay, council is through. City manager's report.
Yes, sir. I have one action item and a couple information for your consideration. The Conservation Land Use, Wetlands, and PD Zoning Workshop. I've got to get a secure date. Staff proposes either November 29th or December 4th, both at 5 o'clock. I'm not sure which dates are better for y'all. November 29th and December 4th, both at 5 o'clock.
I will not be weighing in on this one.
The light just came on that, huh?
December 4th.
Just like to say my wife is smiling right now.
And I'm also seeing the information on the summer intern program.
Ma'am, I need to get the action item complete first here.
Okay, excuse me.
My preference would be November 29th, I believe.
November 29th?
Well, I can go
Okay.
either day. So if somebody has a problem with that, I'll go the other one.
What day is Thanksgiving?
It's the week prior.
Okay.
22nd.
I think I'm okay with the 29th.
29th it is, 5 o'clock. Two information items we completed, and Mayor, thanks for attending the summer internship program. This is the third year we've done it.
Yes,
We
sir.
had 18 participants this year. We started the program with 12 participants. We had several repeat customers that shared their experience with the group. We had a couple parents that also participated in the final. I think everybody, Mayor, and you can attest, had a good experience learning what the city does.
Yeah, they seemed to all enjoy it, and it was a great meeting. There used to be a program, kids say the funniest things
Yeah,
or something.
yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
It was very good. They were very outspoken.
The only complaint we had is those that worked for field operations in our Water Resources Department complained that they had to start work pretty early.
Yeah.
So getting out of bed at 6, I guess, was not the norm.
One young lady said, we asked her how she liked the job, and she said, "Oh, it was great. It was my first job and my last one."
And her last one?
I think I asked her if she was marrying somebody that had a lot of money or had that in time. So I think she's going to find somebody.
And
Kids
just
say the darndest thing.
Yeah.
And so, Council, part of the strategy on this was to use other people's monies to do this. So we did a good job. The city actually only funded 4 of these positions. So.
Okay, good.
Second is as you are aware, the budget workshop is tomorrow, beginning at 5 o'clock here in council chambers, followed by the 2 public hearings on September 4th and September 13th. And you should have had your read-aheads already distributed to you. If you have any questions, please contact staff prior to the meeting. And subject to your questions completes my portion of the update.
Any questions?
I only had one. Did we find out anything about the internship program that the school board was talking about? Okay. Okay.
Okay.
I was
City
curious.
Attorney, any other questions? I don't see anybody. City Attorney, anything for the good of the cause? Okay. In that case, we are finished with this meeting. I declare it adjourned.